Saint Rita, the Impossible Saint. Margherita Lotti was born in 1381 in the city of Roccaporena, a small suburb of Cascia, near Spoleto, Umbria, Italy. Her parents, Antonio and Amata Lotti, considered her birth a very special gift from God, for Rita was born to them as they were already advancing in age. Her name, Margherita, means pearl. She was affectionately called Rita, the short form of her baptismal name. Her parents, Antonio and Amata Lotti, were known to be noble, charitable persons who gained the epithet Conciliatori di Cristo, or Peacemakers of Christ. As a young girl, Rita frequently visited the convent of the Augustinian nuns in Cascia and dreamed of one day joining their community. According to pious accounts, Rita was originally pursued by a notary named Gabio, but she resisted his offer. She was married at age 12 to a nobleman named Paolo Mancini. Her parents arranged her marriage, a common practice at the time, despite her repeated requests to be allowed to enter a convent of religious sisters. Her husband, Paolo Mancini, was known to be a rich, quick-tempered, immoral man who had many enemies in the region of Cascia. The marriage lasted for 18 years, during which she is remembered for her Christian values as a model wife and mother who made efforts to convert her husband from his abusive behavior. Rita endured his insults, physical abuse, and infidelities for many years. According to popular tales, through humility, kindness, and patience, Rita was able to convert her husband into a better person, more specifically renouncing a family feud known at the time as La Vendetta. Rita eventually bore two sons, Gian Giacomo or Giovanni Antonio and Paolo Maria, and brought them up in the Christian faith. As time went by and the family feud between the Chicchi and Mancini families became more intense, Paolo Mancini became congenial, but his allies betrayed him and he was violently stabbed to death by Guido Chicchi, a member of the feuding family. Rita gave a public pardon at Paolo's funeral for her husband's murderers. Paolo Mancini's brother, Bernardo, was said to have continued the feud and hoped to convince Rita's son to seek revenge. Bernardo convinced Rita's sons to leave their manor and live at the Mancini Villa ancestral home. As her sons grew, their characters began to change as Bernardo became their tutor. Rita's sons wished to avenge their father's murder. Rita, fearing that her sons would lose their souls, tried to dissuade them from retaliating, but to no avail. She asked God to remove her sons from the cycle of vendettas and prevent mortal sin and murder. Her sons died of dysentery a year later, which pious Catholics believe was God's answer to her prayer, taking them by natural death rather than risk them committing a mortal sin, punishable by hell. After the deaths of her husband and sons, Rita decided to enter the monastery of St. Mary Magdalene in Cascia, but was turned away. Although the convent acknowledged Rita's good character and piety, the nuns were afraid of being associated with her due to the scandal of her husband's violent death and because she was not a virgin. However, she persisted in her cause and was given a condition before the convent could accept her: the task of reconciling her family with her husband's murderers. She implored her three patron saints, John the Baptist, Augustine of Hippo, and Nicholas of Tolentino, to assist her, and she set about the task of establishing peace between the hostile parties of Cascia. Popular religious tales recall that the bubonic plague, which ravaged Italy at the time, infected Bernardo Mancini, causing him to relinquish his desire to feud any longer with the Chicchi family. She was able to resolve the conflicts between the families and at the age of 36 was allowed to enter the monastery. Pious Catholic legends later recount that Rita was transported into the monastery of Saint Magdalene via levitation at night into the garden courtyard by three patron saints. She remained at the monastery, living by the Augustinian rule until her death from tuberculosis on May 22, 1457. When Rita was approximately 60 years of age, she was meditating before an image of Christ crucified. Suddenly, a small wound appeared on her forehead, as though a thorn from the crown that encircled Christ's head had loosened itself and penetrated her own flesh. It was considered to be a partial stigmata, and she bore this external sign of union with Christ until her death in 1457. One of those who visited her some few months before her death, a relative from her hometown of Rocaparena, was privileged to witness firsthand the extraordinary things wrought by Rita's request. When asked whether she had any special desires, Rita asked only that a rose from the garden of her parents' home be brought to her. It was a small favor to ask, but quite an impossible one to grant in the month of January. Nevertheless, on returning home, the woman discovered to her amazement a single brightly colored blossom on the bush where the nun said it would be. Picking it, she returned immediately to the monastery and presented it to Rita, who gave thanks to God for this sign of love. Thus, the saint of the thorn became the saint of the rose, and she whose impossible request were granted her became the advocate of all those whose own requests seemed impossible as well. As she breathed her last, Rita's final words to the sisters who gathered around her were, "Remain in the holy love of Jesus. Remain in obedience to the Holy Roman Church. Remain in peace and fraternal charity." Having faithfully and lovingly responded to God's many invitations to her in the course of her 76 years, Rita returned to God in peace on May 22, 1457. Her body, which has remained incorrupt over the centuries, is venerated today in the shrine of Kasia, which bears her name. Her feast is observed on the anniversary of her death,